Millennia before the Iliad, the Bible, or any story you've ever heard, we find the first story ever written, the Epic of Gilgamesh. In this story, Enkidu was a man created by the gods who ran freely amongst the beasts of the steppe until the taste of human desire changed him forever. Shunned by the gazelles he called family, he was forced into the world of men and civilization. Today we'll uncover why bread became the food that marked his transformation, and we'll taste the meal that turned Enkidu from beast into human. Around 5000 BC, the world's first civilization started to emerge. Mesopotamia in modern-day Iraq, the Indus Valley in what is now Pakistan and India, ancient Egypt, and the Yellow River civilization in China. These cultures define the moment humans moved out of the prehistoric world, changing from hunter-gatherers to farmers during this Neolithic period, by cultivating land, domesticating animals, and building the first cities. It's here that the first forms of writing developed, from around 3000 BC, where reed pens were used to make inscriptions on clay tablets in a writing system known as cuneiform. And in the Mesopotamian city of Uruk, written on clay tablets, around 2000 BC, we find the first story ever recorded, the Epic of Gilgamesh. The story explores the circle of life, the human struggle with mortality, and the impossible pursuit of divine knowledge. To understand this story, we need to meet two central figures, Gilgamesh and the wild man sent to balance him, Enkidu. Gilgamesh is the tyrant king of Uruk. He is restless, proud, and unstoppable. He spends his days challenging the men of the city to combat, and his nights seducing any woman he wishes. His most terrible act is taking a bride on her wedding night before her husband, a violation that shocks the gods themselves. To correct his ways, the gods decide not to punish him, but to balance him. They create his opposing force, Enkidu, a man shaped of clay. He's a wild creature of the steppe. His body is covered in thick, matted curls. He drinks from watering holes and grazes on wild grass with the gazelles. He lives entirely outside human civilization, innocent and untouched by human desire. When a hunter discovers his traps are being sabotaged, he realizes it's Enkidu that fills in the pits to protect his animal companions. The frustrated hunter goes to Gilgamesh for help, who suggests a different kind of trap for Enkidu, the temple prostitute, Shamhat. Shamhat seduces Enkidu, and with this first taste of the pleasures of this world, his life begins to change. He loses the innocence of the beasts and gains the knowledge of man. Upon hearing of Gilgamesh's tyranny in Uruk, Enkidu is compelled to confront and challenge him, but before Shamhat takes him to the city, she leads him to a company of shepherds, where he learns the true marker of civilization, food. They set bread before him, they set beer before him. Enkidu did not eat the bread. He eyed it uncertainly, then stared. Enkidu did not know how to eat bread. Shamhat tells him, "Eat the bread, Enkidu, the staff of life." This meal marks the moment his transformation becomes irreversible. He's no longer a beast, he has become a man. Bread represents more than food in the ancient world. It symbolises civilization itself. It represents the leap from hunter-gatherers to cultivating land, storing harvests, and shaping nature through knowledge. Wild animals eat what they find. Humans eat what they create. These things seem obvious to us now, but imagine being one of the first humans watching a seed grow because you placed it in the soil. For early civilization, this was the knowledge of the divine. Bread is sacred across ancient cultures because it stands at the boundary between human effort and divine mystery. It's the closest humans get to imitating creation itself. When Enkidu and Gilgamesh finally meet, the two fight, but instead of killing one another, something unexpected happens. They become brothers. For the first time, Gilgamesh meets someone equal to him in strength and spirit, and he gains respect. Their friendship transforms him from a tyrant to a shepherd of his people. Through Enkidu, he learns what it means to love another human being. So together, they embark on a heroic quest to the cedar forest, which is fiercely guarded by the deity Humbaba. Against all warnings, they confront and kill him, But this act of violence brings divine wrath from the gods. The goddess Ishtar, already enraged after Gilgamesh rejects her advances, sends the bull of heaven to destroy them. Gilgamesh and Enkidu defeat the bull, but the gods still want payment. They decree that Enkidu must die for their collective sin. His death terrifies Gilgamesh, as for the first time he feels the grip of his own mortality. And so Gilgamesh, grief-stricken for the loss of his closest companion, Enkidu, and terrified by the realization that he too must die one day, Gilgamesh abandons his throne and wanders the wilderness. He becomes what Enkidu once was, a creature of the steppe, hunting wild animals, letting his hair grow long, and clothing himself in animal skins. Unable to accept his own mortality, he sets out in search of the one man who escaped death, Utnapishtim, the survivor of the Great Flood, who was granted immortality by the grace of the gods. But when Gilgamesh finally reaches him and asks for the secret of immortality, he learns a devastating truth. There is no secret to eternal life. Gilgamesh refuses to accept this, and so he's challenged by Utnapishtim. To truly prove man can bend forces beyond his control to his will, try to stay awake for 7 days and 7 nights. Of course, Gilgamesh fails miserably and falls asleep straight away. As he sleeps, Utnapishtim asks his wife to bake a loaf of bread for each day that passes. So when Gilgamesh finally awakes, he's shown the physical proof of his own limitations. Utnapishtim says to Gilgamesh as he awakes, "The first loaf is dried hard, the second is leathery, the third soggy, the crust of the fourth has turned white, the fifth is grey with mould, the sixth is fresh, the seventh was still on the coals when I touched you and you woke up." These 7 loaves of bread symbolize something deeper than a simple meal. They expose the human condition, the certainty of decay, the boundary between the mortal and the divine. Watching the bread age day after day forces Gilgamesh to confront the uncomfortable truth that all things rot, weaken, and return back to the earth. Whether we will it or not, it's beyond our control. Even in farming, which is the great triumph that separates civilization from wilderness, we never truly control anything. We can plant a seed, but we don't control the rain. We can cultivate the soil, but we don't choose whether it's fertile. The illusion of control is a human comfort, not a divine reality. And so the 2 moments that feature bread in the epic, which are Enkidu's first human meal and the 7 loaves of bread baked for Gilgamesh, form a perfect circle, reflecting the cycle of existence. Through this metaphor, Gilgamesh finally learns what he was running from, that mortality is not a curse, it's what gives life meaning. Would we cherish our days if they lasted forever? Would Gilgamesh have loved Enkidu so intensely if he thought they would have eternity together? If there was no threat of loss, would joy feel as sweet or companionship as sacred? These are the questions we're left pondering, the same questions that were posed 4,000 years ago. So with these thoughts in mind, let's make the bread described in this ancient story and taste the food that marks the boundary between beast and humans. To make the bread, I take 25 grams of sourdough starter. You can also use yeast. I then add 100 grams of lukewarm water and 125 grams of white flour. I'm using wheat flour here. Commonly, this would have been used by priests in temples. Common folk would have eaten barley bread, but here we're going to be using wheat flour to give a nicer texture. I mix this all together and I leave it to rise for 4 or 5 hours. Once it is nearly doubled in size, I'm going to make 2 dough balls out of this. I had to add a little bit more flour to get the dough to be the correct consistency. I then cover this while I work on the fillings. The first loaf I'm making is savoury, and I'm adding fried red onion into it, as onions, garlics and leeks were part of the Mesopotamian diet. So I fried this in a bit of butter and added some salt. For the sweet loaf, I chop up 2 dates. As dates were also known to be part of the Mesopotamian diet, there was a sweet cake, kulupu, which was offered to the goddess Ishtar, and it was often filled with dates, walnuts and pistachios. Mersu was also another sweet that was made of dates, so we know that these were commonly eaten, particularly with nuts. I then fold the onion and date into each of the loaves of bread, and I bake these at 200 degrees Celsius for about 10 to 12 minutes. In the meantime, I wanted to make some toppings and side dishes, so I've cut up an apple and I'm making 2 ricotta dips. Bulls and cows were sacred animals in Mesopotamian religion, and so dairy products were a large part of the Mesopotamian diet. Soft cheeses like ricotta would have been made, butter and milk would have also been consumed, which is why here we're using ricotta cheese. One dip I'm going to make sweet and the other one savoury. For the savoury dip, I'm adding the leftover onion from the onion bread, and for the sweet, I'm adding a drizzle of honey. I'm also adding some almonds and walnuts. After about 10 to 15 minutes, our bread's looking really nice, so I've taken it out. We've got our loaves of bread. This is the one with onion, and this one is the one with the dates. We've got an apple, we've got walnuts and almonds, and then I made 2 different types of sauces. This one I just mixed in some of the leftover onion, and in this one I drizzled some honey. That's really nice. I love the flavour of the dates. It gives it a nice sweetness, but it's not overly sweet. It's not like when you put sugar in it. Let me try it with some of the honey and ricotta. That's also really nice. I really like having apples and walnuts together. I think it's a really nice flavour combination. The apple and walnut is unbeatable. Let's try the onion bread now. That smells really good. This one could do with a bit more salt actually. Well, the flavour of the onion is really good. Let's dip in some of the cheese. We added salt to this, so it tastes a lot better when you dip it with the cheese. I think overall it's a really nice simple meal. I feel more civilised already. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know down below what you think of the Epic of Gilgamesh.